Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Jessica Ward King, the StigmaCrusher here. Today I wanted to tell you about 5 things that I wish people knew about mental health. The first thing is that mental health and mental illness are not the same thing. We tend to wander around in our culture using the word mental health as though it is just kind of the catch-all word for anything mental health or mental illness related. But they are actually 2 separate things. Everybody has mental health. Everybody has to take care of their mental health, do things to protect their mental health. We have to have psychological health and safety in the workplace for mental health. Everyone has mental health. Mental illness, not everyone has. About 1 in 4 people will have it at any given time. And by the time someone is 80, they have about a 50% chance of having had mental illness at some point in their life. It's just like physical illness, where not everybody is always physically ill. Sometimes you've got a cold. Sometimes you have heart disease or cancer. Sometimes you have a chronic illness. So mental illness is just the same. Sometimes you have a more short-term disorder that can be, so to say, cured by treatment or even just by time going by. Sometimes you have a bit of a longer term disorder that will eventually resolve. And sometimes you have a disorder that is relapsing, remitting, and chronic and never going to go away. The second thing I wish people knew about mental health and mental illness is that I cannot just meditate my mental illness away. Things like meditation, like taking a bath, like taking a walk, those are excellent ways to take care of your mental health. And so this is going to relate a lot to question 1. They're great ways to do self-care. They're great ways to protect your mental health from getting worse, but they are not particularly effective treatments for mental illness. Now, let me kind of backtrack a bit by saying people who are struggling with mental illness have mental health as well. And so it is worthwhile for people that are struggling with mental illness to take care of their mental health. And so I would never say to someone who's struggling, I wouldn't say, oh, you mustn't do self-care. Absolutely, you must do self-care. Just like if you've got a cold or you've got cancer or you've got some other chronic illness, you still have to make sure that you eat your vegetables, take exercise, drink lots of water, right? You still have to take care of your body. You have to take care of your mind if you have mental illness as well. So those things are not necessarily effective for treating mental illness. Things that are effective for treating mental illness can include talk therapy. It can include medications. It can include other physical treatments like deep brain stimulation, like magnet therapy, so RTMS, even like electroconvulsive therapy, ECT. It can also include things like taking care of your spiritual health. It can include, it really can include a lot of things that aren't necessarily in the medical model as well. So just meditating is not, or like I say, taking a bath or taking myself shopping is not going to while away my depression or improve my anxiety or any of those things. But what it will do is help shore up my mental health so that I have enough resources, hopefully, to deal with my mental illness. The third thing that I would like people to know about mental health and mental illness is that words do matter. I've heard a lot lately about people saying, oh, well, it doesn't matter if you use words that are stigmatizing, like, oh, that's crazy. I would totally kill myself if I didn't get a good mark. Even things like, oh, he's so schizophrenic, or it's so schizophrenic. People say, oh, it doesn't matter. Everybody knows what you mean. They know you're not talking about mental health. Actually, words do matter. When a person, like myself, struggling with mental illness, hears people using mental illness terms in a throwaway manner, in a stigmatizing manner, and particularly in a negative manner. So using language like, oh, he's lost a few marbles, or one flew over the cuckoo's nest, or he's a psycho. That immediately makes me as a person with mental illness, want to turn in on myself and hide. It makes me think that there's something wrong with me because people are using these terms that apply to me or people like me, and they're using them negatively, or they're using them in a way that's supposed to be funny or in some kind of throwaway manner. And it makes me feel like I cannot be my authentic self. It's just like saying, oh, that's so gay, or making gay jokes or innuendo, or LGBTQ2 themed jokes or innuendo. Those things do matter. They make the LGBTQ2 person feel as though they are not seen and feel as though they are a laughingstock. The same thing applies with mental health and mental illness related words that are used inappropriately in a stigmatizing manner. So yes, words do matter, and no, you shouldn't say that if you're wondering. The fourth thing that I wish people knew about mental health and mental illness is that, for me at least, the stigma has often been much, much worse than the actual illness itself. I can deal with the mental illness. There are medications for that. There's talk therapy for that. There are other treatments for that. I can talk to my religious, spiritual advisors. I can, use my employee assistance programs. I can read things online. I can do peer support. I mean, there are a variety of things I can do to help my mental health and to fight against my mental illness. But what is a lot harder to do single-handedly is fight against stigma. Now, I'm trying, obviously, but it's really, really hard. And the stigma, what I think is so hard is that it gets into, I was going to say I can't speak for your experience, but it gets into my head, and that's called self-stigma. And it literally, it gets in, it kind of wheedles its way in, like that song that you can't get out of your head. And it talks to you in your head, not in a I'm hearing voices kind of way, but in a I know I'm talking to myself in my head, but it's this constant gnawing voice that's just constantly putting me down. And you can't do that because you have mental illness. And let me tell you, this voice uses stigmatizing language. So you're crazy. You can't be expected to find anyone to love you. You can't be a mother. You're a psycho. What do you expect them to give you a child when you have a mental illness, you psycho? That's the kind of thing that this stigma that has wheedled its way into my brain, this self-stigma, says to me and has said to me my whole life. Seeing the stigma out there in society is really harmful as well, because again, it makes me feel like I want to turn in on myself and hide. And stigma really thrives on the hiding. And it makes it grow stronger when people continue to use the stigmatizing language. Other people who are struggling with mental illness hide and don't want to talk about their own lived experience and don't want to, be their authentic selves. And that's where stigma is just woohoo, let's have a party, because that's exactly what stigma is. It's that mark of shame that gets attached to something, mental illness, and literally gets attached to people as well and marks them as something undesirable. And so every time that I say I have bipolar disorder and I see people get really uncomfortable and they're shifty and their eyes shift away, and they, even that makes me know that stigma's in the room, and it reactivates that voice in my head. And it's even worse when people actually do say things that are stigmatizing, and it's hard to continue to try to crush stigma when it's right in front of you, and it's hard to continue to try to crush stigma when it's literally in your head. So I find the stigma quite often to be much worse than the illness itself. And trust me, the illness is bad. For those of you who are new here, I struggle with bipolar disorder, and the depressions can get suicidal, and the manias can get psychotic, and it can be bad. But the stigma is much, much worse. the last thing, the fifth thing that I wish that people knew about mental illness is that it can be disabling. So I actually identify as having a disability, and my disability is my mental illness. Because when I'm depressed, for example, I find it difficult to read. I'm a knowledge worker. My work, my what I do for my profession is think and read and write things. And so when I'm depressed, I find it difficult to do my job. I can't read books. I have to use audiobooks in order just to be able to escape my own brain. I find it difficult to do household tasks. I can't, first of all, the get up and go to do them, but second of all, the organizational skills to do them. My memory lapses particularly when I'm depressed, but also when I'm manic, and I'm not able to do tasks in order. What am I supposed to be doing? I'm supposed to be making supper. I'm supposed to put on the rice. I'm supposed to cook the chicken. I'll get as far as boil the water, and then I'm like, what was I supposed to be doing? Oh, rice. Oh, where's the rice? And so I find it difficult to do those kinds of tasks. I find it difficult to care for my family. I somehow scrape by the energy, generally speaking, to care for my son, and I am very lucky to have a loving partner that has been, as long as she's been with me, I have had mental illness, so she's never known any different, and she married me anyway. And so I'm very fortunate to have that backup, but it is extremely disabling, the mental illness. And there are times when I'm euthymic, which is normal mood, but that doesn't mean I struggle any less with the disability, right? So there are always going to be times when things are doing better and things are doing worse. And with my disease, I know that it's relapsing and remitting. So every time I get rid of a depressive episode, I'm like, well, see you again in a few months or years, or gosh, maybe even weeks. Similarly with the manic episodes, they will always come back. And so yes, mental illness can be incredibly disabling. Even if I look really high functioning and I can put on the makeup and do the hair and show up and do the meeting somehow or another, you see me turn off my Zoom camera and I just dissolve into a puddle. So there's a certain amount of acting and of showing up that I can do when I'm ill, but it still doesn't detract from the difficulty that I have in doing daily tasks. So yes, mental illness can be disabling. It isn't always. People can often, with different diseases, different people, different treatments, can often do the things they need to do with little difficulty. But for some of us, it is actually a disabling condition. So that's it. That's my top 5 that I wish people knew. I'm wondering, what are your top wishes for what people knew? If you can, put one down in the comments below. What is your number 1 thing that you wish people knew about mental health or mental illness? I would really love to hear what you guys have got to say. That's it for this week. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.
StigmaCrusher.